I'm scared of this so many L2s kind of thesis. I think it's just scary because coupled with chain abstraction, like you go to this new L2, let's say it's a multi-sig of 2 out of 3, and something happens on that L2, and then users don't realize something happening.
This episode is brought to you by Nuffle Labs. Nuffle Labs is pioneering the first blended execution network. Now live on public DevNet, developers can build cross-VM apps using WASM, EVM, and Rust with real-time composability. Start building next-gen decentralized apps today at fluent.xyz. Welcome back to the Epic Web3 podcast. I'm your host, Alex, CEO and co-founder of Epic Web3. And joining me today is our co-host, DeFi Saint, right? Founder of Layer 2M, a media company about modularity. Hey, man.
Yeah, hey man, how is it going, Alex? It's nice to
All
meet you
good, all good.
guys.
Yeah, and our guest today is Altan Tutar, CEO and co-founder at Nuffle Labs, the company building near data availability and the near fast finality layer, right? So Nuffle Labs are going to build a tool that make data transfer cheap, easy, and efficient. So I hope we'll talk about it. Hi, Altan.
Hey everybody, nice to be here. It's a sunny day in London, so which is quite rare. So that's gonna be. It seems like it's gonna be a nice podcast. So that's the foreshadowing of what's gonna happen. But nice to be here.
How many sunny days in London? 10 a day, a
I don't
year, a year.
know. Like it's sunnier than Ireland. So Ireland is very Dublin is the worst place to be on earth in the winter. But London gets like every week, like 1 or 2 days, maybe sunny. Sometimes you get nothing, like zero, pretty much. So, whenever these days are like sunny, I try to go out in the morning, walk a little bit because it's pretty nice.
Did you manage to do this morning?
Yeah, I mean that's why I got my coffee.
Perfect,
But,
perfect. Okay, so let's start with a little bit of Nuffle Labs history. So this data availability and fast finality layers you're building were initially developed internally in Near, right? So what's the reason? What was the reason for making it a separate company? Can you tell us a little bit about this?
yeah, it's a good question. So, a lot of people ask this one particularly because we're like, are you guys mad? Like, why are you guys leaving a company that's already established in top 20 um, in market cap? So it was predominantly me. Like, always want to be a founder. I've tried it before a couple of times. In college, actually, I did like a virtual reality startup that got like 50 or 100K in the US. Obviously burned the money because it was really hard to build a business around VR at the time. That's 2017, 2018. The idea was pretty much like a video conferencing on VR. So what Meta does today. But for that market, I was early. But going back to Nuffle, we started near DA internally back in almost, it's been a year now. Back in near, and the task was pretty much was look at Near's tech stack and come up with something that's useful for the entire crypto world, right? Ilya started to be like play this sort of very cooperative game because if you look at 2020, 21 cycle, that time all the L1s were quite, I would say, cannibalistic towards each other. Like you remember the conversations between Avalanche and Near. So we were like, hey, this whole blockchain space is going to be very cooperative. So what can we do? So we looked at Near, and Near is good for data availability for two reasons. Well, it's first cheap, right? It's very easy it's cheap to post blobs into Near itself, and we already showed that with RSS3, which is already live on mainnet. That like took the cost down from like almost like 99% compared to pre-EIP 4844. The other thing is scalability. There are currently 6 shards on Near. So every shard can get 4 megabytes per second. And the thesis was like, you can actually push a lot of data if you really need to. That's how we started. And quickly, when you start to go into the layer 2 market, you start to see this sort of fragmentation in liquidity and state. That was pretty not like it was people started talking about it last year, but it started to become really clear this year when you start to have a lot of layer twos launch. Uniswap is building their own layer two. I'm very sure all the DeFi protocols will build their own ones. So in that world, what becomes most important? How do you kind of unify the state and liquidity in one place? And when you start thinking about that, a lot of folks, if you want to build this decentralized, traditionally you had to build your own L1. That's what Near did. Looked at Ethereum and said, well, this sharding thing is not going to happen soon, so let's build it ourselves, right? Like versus today's process, I think is more like I want some security, like I want to be able to bootstrap my network. Cycles are shorter, so I want to like ship things faster. And for that reason, like Eigenlayer is great, right? You can just go to Eigenlayer and be like, I want this cryptoeconomic security, but rather than paying, so if you look at the L1s today, like you see 5 to 10% inflation on the token, I actually want to pay like 50 basis points, right? So smaller than what I would do if I were to build an L1. So it was very like convincing for us to say, hey, let's build an AVS for this, not like build another network or not use, or don't blow like Near's state with it because it's already, there's a lot of stuff going on. So we said, let's build this AVS. But quickly, I can turn around. There's a lot of customers that use Near DA and FFL, but really these things at the end, it makes stuff cheaper, faster, and secure, right? So we started to think like, what are the other things that let's internalize these products? Because like, look, candidly, like DA is great. It's a great kind of acquisition channel for us, but like it's very free, like it's cheap. Like everywhere you look, like people don't tell you this from the Celestia side of things, but like I don't think there's a great business model to build on DA. Like it's very hard to incur fees. And the fast finality, when you look at it, is like there's a lot of big players like the wormholes and layer zeros of the world, and Across and like all the intense stuff is already solving that problem really nicely. And turns out people don't care about that much about decentralization, right? Like a lot of things I've learned from throughout this when we started is like I really care about decentralization because I grew up in Turkey, but like users don't care. Users care about cheap, like how cheap it is. And if you try to do layer to layer two transfer today on Across, it's like a cent and less than a cent sometimes. Like it's very affordable. But
yeah, but it's sometimes more expensive and sometimes takes half an hour, but still it's okay for the user. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, most of the times intents actually take like, I mean, I've tried a couple of times. It's pretty fast. Like it's almost like second or 2 seconds, right? Like depends on the solvers, availability of the solvers. But like that problem is already solved, I think. And my thesis now is like looking back what we've learned over the last 4 months, because we started Nuffle 4 months ago, is like, I think for you to live in a cross-chain world, you need to have a very special solution, right? Like I think general solutions are done. You need to be very laser focused on a very small market and win that market, right? Pretty much like a startup like normal startup book, right? I mean, this from started with Epic Web3, like stuff like that, right? And DeFi Saint knows it because he's like very focused on one single niche and know that niche pretty well. So we've started like we're going towards more like internalizing these products and empowering what we call Nuff protocol. So we work with Eigenlayer on this one. The reason why we started working on Nuff protocol was it is kind of modular. We put a lot of pieces into together, but essentially we've come to realize 2 things, where one thing is people started coming to us and say like, how do I put Near into your AVS, which was a kind of something that was like, I never thought about that, right? So like, and our suggestion was to bridge Near onto Eigenlayer, so use a bridge, and then stake it on Eigenlayer itself. And candidly, we just didn't like that solution. The other thing is, this is not clear to a lot of folks, but it's going to be clear in 6 to 12 months in the Eigenlayer ecosystem, is that so nobody's paying anything for the LRTs today, right? So people borrow ETH, but nobody's really paying anything except I think EigenDA is the only one that, because Eigen can pay rewards now. And when you talk to a lot of AVSs, they tell you, I actually plan to, like, I don't want to pay anything at all, right? Which is kind of surprising, like, given the whole ecosystem. And my thesis is that, like, 50%, so LRTs are currently saying 50 basis points on your borrowed ETH, but a lot of folks would want to optimize the cost, right? Like they would want to say, well, I don't want to pay 50 basis points on this borrowed cryptocurrency security because that's a downward pressure on my token, right? I'm going to give it to operators, and operators are businesses, so they're just going to dump it to the market, right? So what we're thinking about is why not, if this is the verifiable cloud, why not use not only ETH, but also all assets that sit everywhere, right? Like L1s, L2s. This is a meme currently, but like you can use Near, you can use Cardano, you can use whatever you want to do. And on the L2 side, you have OP, ARB, all these tokens. And is there a world where you can bundle some of ETH and some of maybe ETH tokens like ARB, OP, and rather than paying like 50 basis points on your borrowed security, you pay 35 to 40 or 25, doesn't really matter, right? Borrow some ETH, so it's like a bundle basket really. And this really matters because also in the future, you can create things like what I call LRT bundles. So currently the risk profile of everything is the same because like there's no slashing. But when there's slashing, the bridge, the LRTs that back bridges are not going to be the same that back your degenis thing on Eigenlayer. So there needs to be some sort of like a different bundles. So that's what we're trying to achieve, like getting the story back in line. Near the NFFL, they're great solutions for what you do, but really take those internally, use it on enough protocol to be able to allow people to stake from anywhere and reward from anywhere as well. So basically extending Eigenlayer outside of Ethereum L1, but to all the other chains. Does that make sense? Like the whole storyline? Because I'm happy to deep dive into it.
Yeah,
because I'm also on the stage of like kind of getting everything into one thing.
Yeah, great. Makes sense. So you were saying something that caught my attention here. So yeah, I have two questions asked, so maybe after them you can take whichever one first. So you were trying to, yeah, so I want to know, why do you guys choose Eigenlayer to build the fast finality layer? And that is one. Then secondly, you were trying to talk about laser niche focused areas, just like, yeah, some like me, DeFi Saint, focusing on modularity and chain abstraction. So like aside from AVSs, is there any niche focus area that near DA is targeting the market audience? Like, I mean, like the general rollups app chains, or is it just on the AVS side?
Yeah. So the first question is Eigenlayer. Why Eigenlayer? Yes. For me, and for us really as a team, I admire two kind of, I made three basically leaders in crypto. I think Vitalik is there. I've started with Vitalik. I'm not going to talk about Vitalik from 2017. I really liked when I got into crypto, Ilya and Anatoly, because I was a Rust developer and I really loved I like Near's approach and Solana's approach. So, but Near was way easier to use than Solana today in terms of building. And people talk about it all the time, right? Solana is very hard to build on. So I picked Near as an employee, but then quickly realized I really love Ilya's sort of point of view, but also started to like the Ethereum point of view, which I think Shuram started speaking to this in like the last year or so, like as being the kind of the figurehead of Eigenlayer. So I really care about the ecosystem founder that I build on, right? So that was one. Number two is going fast to market. So if you're going to build a decentralized fast finality solution that allows you to look at the states of layer twos in a decentralized manner, Eigenlayer is probably a great place because you can build an ABS in 6 months rather than build an L1 and quickly launch it, right? Versus if you're building an L1, like you can build an L2 too, but L2 security assumptions are pretty weak, right? You're using multi-sig versus here you're using like literally ETH validators and you can decentralize it with 40, 50, like 100 operators if you want to. And third, which is really important for me, is when I started getting to the Eigenlayer ecosystem, I honestly don't think there's no other restaking sort of ecosystem that's very strong. Like the builders are there, like the alt layer guys, Lagrange guys. I don't know, there's opacity guys. Like there's a lot of great builders, which is very important in crypto, right? Like who are you grinding with? So those were the three reasons. And the second question you asked the DeFi Saint about like the DA side, we have people that will launch with Near DA. So there's like a DEX coming up. There is which is currently on blast. But currently, what I've realized is like we have 16 or 17 that's like going to launch in Q3, Q4 on Polygon and others, because Polygon is still getting ready to launch. But even if I do like hundred thousands of rollups, I'm not going to make money. And this is a business at the end of the day, right? So we will like people can use it, like we'll still help people, but we won't be like focusing predominantly on our GTM onto near DA. We will still use it for our own purpose, which is to store blobs of layer twos, because we need to connect different layer twos for the stake from anywhere solution. But candidly, like it's pretty hard to. There's also already like like we believe it's not worth to fight for, right? Like Ethereum EIP like EIP 844 is pretty cheap, to be honest, right? Like
Yeah.
people will eventually go there. So we don't see a long-term market play out in DA, which is completely separate to what Celestia folks say, right? Like that's how I see it.
I like the way how we ask one question and you tell us the whole story. So and I really like it. So I don't even want to interrupt you because that's super interesting what you are talking about. So maybe I didn't catch it, but you said you mentioned that you don't see a lot of business in data availability itself. So what should be a business model for Nuffle Labs? So I mean,
Mhm.
where do you plan to accrue value to get revenue
Yeah,
eventually?
very good question. So, yeah, DA doesn't make money. Fast Finality can make money, but it's pretty. So you can integrate it as layer zero DVN, which essentially allows people to be your validator set if you're using layer zero. So layer zero as the infrastructure, and then NFFL as the kind of the solution that says this is the state of this blockchain that I'm using to message pass, right? So those are like what's called validator sets. For us, Nuffle, I mean, we haven't changed our public position yet, but essentially, these near DA, which is cheap to store data, and then NFFL, which allows you to move across like L1 to L2, L2 to L2, will be powering what we call Nuff protocol. So Nuff protocol is a restaking protocol that settles on eigenlayer. So think about like on the Ethereum side, you have layer twos. Ours is a bit more of like a restaking protocol that you can stake from anywhere. So you can stake from L2s, which is Optimism, Arbitrum, whatever, or you can stake from the L1s itself, and the assets stay where they are. So we don't bridge them, right? We basically say assets stay where they are. We mint them on Ethereum, and it's quite beneficial for LRTs because we have like what we call a LRT wizard that allows you to launch an LRT on that chain pretty fast. So we build all the infra for LRTs. So the business model here is actually quite similar to LRTs in itself, right? Like, so if you launch an LRT with us, there's certain like obviously rev share model or like a fee model that you will incur. But the benefit of this is, as an LRT, you don't have to build to a new L2. You can just build on Nuffle contracts on that chain that we've deployed. So it becomes very easy to create LRTs on these chains. So that's where we're going for. It's like what we call stake from anywhere product, and the benefits are obviously user experience. You don't have to bridge that, what I told you before, from near to the L1, but or like any ETH that lives on L2 can just like put into this contract, and the rest we take care of it. So and yeah, the business model here is to almost be part of the reward share and then the LRT side of things.
All right, cool. So still on the eigenlayer path. So I have there is been an interesting thing I've been thinking about, but like I'm seeming to wrap it around. So I think you are going to explain better here. So I was like, yeah, you guys are using eigenlayer for the NFFL. Also,
Mhm.
eigenlayer itself has eigenDA. So how do you guys tend to manage the competition between near DA and eigenDA? So is like one going to eat the other? Because yeah, I've been trying to wrap some thoughts around that.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of alliances. So like a couple of eigendia folks are angel investors into Nuffle. Um, so
I like this things when in crypto, every founder of every project is an angel investor of another project. I mean, I mean not every, but that's very often situation when for the founders invest in other projects as angels as well.
I mean, historically, like people have done this in nation states too, right? Like there were too many small states, and people did like exchange certain things, right? Like to be able to get an alliance, right? So um,
That's a wise
um,
thought.
yeah, yeah, that's well, EigenDA. So we will we don't see them as competitors. Like as I said, like I don't think NearDA is the value capture for Nuffle. It's a very amazing thing to use because like every L1 has DA. So my take has always been why build a new DA layer like when you can actually use a blockchain that's already been proven. Um, so the other thing is like fast finality layer currently uses DA layers, so to store blobs. So you want some place where if something happens in the fraud process for optimistic L2s, you need a place where you can get the latest sequence. So we use near DA for that currently. Because it's very fast, right? That's why fast finality name comes from. It's 1 to 2 second finality on near versus I think finality on EigenDA is 12 minutes. I know there's going to be improvements on there, but we have plans to integrate EigenDA and Avail as well. So Avail actually coming soon in 1 or 2 weeks that we'll announce. So we
So
don't really
like
care what DA you use.
kind of aggregated DA.
Kind of, yeah. Like, but it doesn't matter what you use, right? Like for me, like honestly, like I'm not a DA maxi or anything, but like it's better. And people will use EIP 4844, which is great. Like
Yeah.
you can use whatever you like. I don't really care. Fast finality layer can integrate with any DA layer to be able to pull that and allow you to give you the stake from anywhere for your layer two. And the benefit for the layer twos is obviously your token. You have a governance token, right? How in a world can you make this more useful or more productive, let's say, for the economy, right? Like that's why you can stake OP and ARB, and on the other side, there's probably like a restake rollup or somebody that can use that at a cheaper price than ETH, right? So that's kind of the thesis here. It's to open up this new market for assets, and near DA and FFL are kind of means to it.
Yeah, great. That's an interesting concept, especially on the aggregated DA part. Because yeah, there was a recent thought-provoking tweet I made on that aggregated DA. So I was trying to like some player like Particle Network already has that in the architecture where there is this kind of aggregated DA. There is I think Celestia in DA Avel. So
Mm-hmm.
that maybe because I'm trying to see DA as L1 as well, like as the shared source of truth, especially for other chains that are trying to use the DA because it's going to be providing security for them and consensus as well. So I think DA there should also be redundancy. So in case if anything happens to one, there should be other DAs, in the underlying architecture as well that is going to like take things up from there.
Yeah.
So I love that concept here of actually, not trying to see it as a competition among others, but yeah, it can fit into the DA architecture as well.
Yeah, I certainly agree. This has been very clear to us from last year. There have been certain teams that are open to this. So from the DA side, there have been teams that have not been open to this. So like there's a couple of folks, for example, Monta Network, which we're part of, did this push where rather than posting to Celestia, I'm going to post it to 6 different DA layers, right? So Nuffle is one of them. And as you said, DeFi Saint is like, you can, if something happens to Celestia, and if I can get blobs from Celestia, I can get it from anywhere else, right? So I can still, so it's kind of like replication concept, which is very common in cloud computing.
Yeah,
Um,
redundancy. Yeah.
and yeah, redundancy. And then Particle Network does the same thing for their own L1. So they use, obviously, I think they use Avail, they use
Yeah, IND and I
they,
think Celestia as well.
yeah, and us. I think it's us as well. So near DA product. So excited for this. I mean, there's even you can go more specific in this concept. Where I was thinking about this with Dino from Fluent. You can say this app can only post data to let's say Celestia, right? This app can only post data to near DA. So being more granular in your DA choice. So that's like requires a bit more engineering in the side of, because every transaction should have it where this data goes in. But still, a thought that's quite interesting to maximize, maximize even fees. Like if you really want to do something like that on the roll up. So it's quite interesting.
Okay, I have a question about chain abstraction. This is one of the main narratives that Near is pushing, and this fast finality layer definitely helps to make this chain abstraction become reality. So can you tell us a little bit about what are your thoughts about this, and how do you plan to make it real?
Yeah, so I run this podcast for Near called Chain Abstracted. So which we had 20 guests now, like from Ilya to Zaki to a bunch of folks from Eigen. Like it's there's been a lot of folks there. Um, this concept is certainly interesting, and that's like when we started talking about it last year when I was at Near. Um, I tend to realize this is a big problem with like bridging, because if you go to Cosmos like and use osmosis, like it's very hard to use. So like that experience for me has been like there needs to be a better sort of a front end. I think the future of this is something like DapDap that's built on Near, something like a bunch of apps that are, you have one front end, just singular, and you get a bunch of networks that you can switch from, and sometimes not even a network to be able to use and buy things that like doesn't really matter where the asset is and picks you the best thing. So obviously, fast finale layer for us, as you said, it's part of that vision, like of that, because you can connect between L2s in 3 to 4 seconds. And for our use case, like stake from anywhere, it's actually great because it doesn't really matter where the tokens are. I just want to contribute to the verifiable cloud, right? Like that's it could be on L2 and L1. And if I'm supporting this verifiable cloud vision, and if we can tell the retailer users a bit better than what verifiable cloud is and improve that upon a certain time, like that is quite interesting, right? Like it's you go in there, and these products are going to be more specialized, right? Like anybody's going to do. I have this DEX that like sits on different layer twos. I can use like a fast finale there or something else to kind of connect them. So yeah, quite excited about what's coming up. Ideally, in the next year or so, I know there's a bunch of folks are building on it, and whenever I open my Twitter feed, there's a lot of kind of chain abstraction shows going on. So which I'm quite excited to see after a year of work.
By the way, wasn't it Near who coined this term? No.
So near there's a product called Near, like a Near MPC,
Okay.
which is like the chain signatures that they talk about, which essentially allows you to sign transactions to any network. But I think that it was from the Everclear guys,
Yeah,
which was before
Connect.
that. It was
Yeah, that was
Connects.
yeah, Arjun. That was like a few years
Yeah,
ago.
it's like a
So,
few
yeah.
years ago, right? But yeah, but
So I
then
first
like
read the blog he wrote about chain abstraction. So yeah, I'm glad to see it since yeah, this year, chain abstraction has been everywhere, and so many key players are trying to push down it because I'm seeing it as the future.
yeah, I agree. And like look, like Eigenlayer is actually like Shriram doesn't talk about it, but Eigenlayer is actually a great example of that too, right? Like you're not building on any chain. You're building everything off chain, and you're taking the security that other chains provide. So I quite like that too. They don't talk about it quite often, but I think it's a very good example of chain abstraction too.
What is the main problem in the blockchain space? What do you think right now?
So let me think. Well, is it technical or is it cultural problems?
I don't know. Let's start with technical.
I see. I think technical is like on the Ethereum side, I'm scared of this so many L2s kind of thesis. I think it's just scary. Because coupled with chain abstraction, like you go to this new L2, let's say it's a multi-sig of 2 out of 3, and something happens on that L2, and then users don't realize something happening, and then like currently the funds are gone. So I've been publicly saying this, but there needs to be like a better way to kind of measure risk on. I mean, L2 Beat does godly work here, but feeding that back into the front ends and letting people understand risk. But funny thing is, humans are very, and this is with insurance, if you study insurance as well, like airlines give you this option to buy insurance when you're actually buying a ticket. And a lot of people don't buy it because, like, ask Curtis, but it actually matters after the fact that you have an insurance, right? So it's the same thing with layer twos. It's like, well, nothing has happened yet. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to happen. So I'm scared of that, like the black swan event of all these chains popping up, and we've seen that with, I think, Ronin Network in 2021, 2022 on the technical side.
Truly,
I think culturally, it was way more. There's benefits, right? Like there's things that happen, which is it was way more tribal in 21, 2022. We're still getting that back a little bit with like the story versus barracks stuff coming up, like the alt VMs kind of fighting with each other. I've seen that quite often. Culturally, I think we have this problem, and I do have this too. It's really hard to explain some of the things and dumb it down to a retail, like on the infra side, without losing the context. Like, I think Eigenlayer is like, how do you explain Eigenlayer to retail? Like, I have no idea. Right? So it's very hard to explain. So like, we need to fix those things, right? Like, I think Shuram is amazing at telling the story to like crypto folks, and he's great at like getting these examples of like verifiable cloud, which like the Web2 engineers can understand. But like, we still need to understand, and this is a critique of myself too, like how do we tell this to your random Joe or your parents or your mom that matters to them, and that's not quite clear. But stablecoins are great, right? Like stablecoins, if you think about it, and DeFi Saint lives in Nigeria. I have parents in Turkey, so like sending money to in stablecoins is amazing because I can send it literally to Turkey.
That's exactly that's definitely a product market fit for an industry, for retail.
So it's amazing, right? So like, I think we need to get better at that as an industry.
Saint, ask something.
All right, yeah. So Atlan, so I'm trying to kind of envision the future for Knuffles, like yeah, just like the way Celestia is trying to scale to 1 gig blocks. Yeah, and I know some other ideas as well are working towards some sort of that. So I was trying to like envision the future for Knuffles. So
yeah,
maybe you can highlight.
So yeah, that's a good question. So the future I'm envisioning is more of if you have any like assets that you've bought on these chains that have like billions of dollars of security, but doesn't even have DeFi, let's make those productive. So like when I say this, people's minds go to Cardano, which is like, which is kind of true, right? But all these chains that like have tons of like economic security, let's work them for people, right? Like, and get more utility out of them. And like the vision, I think for Nuffle is to build sort of the most efficient and permissionless marketplace. And that starts with like working with Eigenlayer, but extends to any chain. So if I were to be successful, and how Nuffle is, on the NearDA and Nuffle backend, we built this most sort of useful and very purpose-specific cross-chain infra that allows everyone to stake from anywhere, and Nuffle is on every other chain. So that's the future I want to work for, but we're certainly have a lot of time to build that. So we've been a company that's been 4 months old. But yeah, so that's what I'm thinking about in the future.
I hope you will succeed in building this and this blockchain future with together with other companies. Okay, I think it's time to wrap up. So thank you very much, Altan, for joining us. See you probably in Bangkok at one of our events or one of other events. There will be a bunch of them. And yeah, good luck with building Nuffle. I think it's a great thing. Thank you.
Great, guys. Thank you.